Welcome to today's CUGC Connect webinar. I'm Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ, and I'm very excited to welcome back to our webinar stage Wendy and Javier, the dynamic duo. It's been a little bit, but they're back. But before I hand things over to them to get us into a Citrix Enterprise Browser, I just have a couple of announcements for you. First off, our next Excel event is in Chicago, CUGC XL Great Lakes. We'll be at Soldier Field this time. We are happening on May 11th. So it's open to all CUGC members. So if you're near Chicago or can easily get to Chicago, we certainly hope to see you there. In just a bit, I'll put a link in the chat for you to get all the information, but we've got a lot of great speakers and content lined up for that one. Also, if you haven't heard, CUGC is now on Slack and Discord, and we'd love to have you join us over there. So you can scan that QR code. It'll take you to our Slack and Discord sign-up page. And just to note that all of the general channels are, of course, public, but we do have private channels for all of the local groups. So if you're interested in connecting with the rest of your pals in your local group, there's instructions for how to do that. And just let us know, and we'll put you in your private chat there. Okay, so just a couple housekeeping details for you. We are recording today's presentation, and we'll send out a link to that recording tomorrow as soon as I have it ready. Also, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A panel. We'll check those as we can, try to get to as many questions as we can today. And then, of course, we'd love to have you say hello in the chat panel and let us know where you're from, and just have some general conversation in there. And all right, I am ready to hand it over. But at first, I want to say that we have new titles today that I just been made aware of. So Javier is now a Citrix Product Specialist Engineer with the Cloud Software Group. And Wendy is the Global Product Specialist Manager, also Cloud Software Group. And I think that means she's over all the things, right? All the software.
I wish, Stephanie.
And Wendy and Javier are both part of our CTA community, Citrix Technology Advocates. So they are very busy with community relations, let's say, but it's great to have them out here with that. So Javier, I'm going to hand things over. Wendy, I'm not sure who's starting, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you guys take over. So here you go.
Fantastic. I'll just let Javier share.
Just a moment.
That's good, Javi. I can see your screen.
This window, and okay, you can see my screen now. And oh, sorry, I get the wrong screen. This is the one. And now,
there we go.
Can you see my screen now? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Looks all good. Okay, I'll kick off, shall I?
Yeah, that's correct.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Wendy.
No problem. So welcome to our session today. As Stephanie said, securing web application access with Citrix Enterprise Browser. My name is Wendy Gay, and I'm joined today by Javier Lopez Santarcruz. So thanks for the introductions already, Stephanie. Next slide, Javi. So when we look at this slide, really, we're talking about bad actors. So bad actors are finding new ways to gather information and data about our end users. Malware now comes in many forms, as you can see from this slide, from keyloggers to malicious extensions in browsers, to even capturing what we have in our clipboards or in our snipping tools. Recently, we've seen a significant rise in browser extensions that are malicious. A Trojanized version of the legitimate ChatGPT extension for Chrome has gained popularity on the Chrome Web Store by accumulating over 9,000 downloads while stealing Facebook accounts. This extension is a copy of a legitimate popular add-on for Chrome named ChatGPT for Google, and that offers integrations on search results. However, this particular malicious version included additional code that attempted to steal Facebook session cookies. slide. So when we think about this potential threat and what it's led to the increase in popularity of enterprise browsers. A large proportion of our enterprise applications are now browser-based and are used to access business-critical information. So if we take a little bit of a step back and go, what is an enterprise browser? Well, an enterprise browser is a locked down browser with isolation capabilities. Each connection is sandboxed in its own process, resulting in a safer browser experience for your end users. The user's attention is focused on those line of business applications, and at the same time, it helps protect from those bad actors. A recent Chrome browser botnet named Cloud9 was discovered in the wild, using malicious extensions to steal online accounts, log keystrokes, inject ads, as well as malicious JavaScript code, and enlisted the victim's browser to DDoS attacks. The Cloud9 botnet was effectively a remote access Trojan, a RAT, for the Chromium web browser, and that included Google Chrome and Edge, and allowed the threat actor to remotely execute commands. So our agenda today, and in this session today, we're going to cover our Citrix Enterprise Browser, and we're going to speak to some of those points that I made already. We're going to talk about the enterprise browser capabilities, how we can help from a security perspective with remote browser isolation, as well as some other features and functions that we want to talk about. We want to talk about the work browser mode. This is one of my favorite features of the Citrix Enterprise Browser, and it's fantastic when we want to show off how we can really improve user experience. We also then have simplified single sign-on, which is again, simplifies everything from an admin perspective, as well as giving a really good end user experience. We're going to talk about how we can manage extensions and bookmarks. So how we can actually push, I suppose, controls around what extensions get installed and what we force and what we actually deny access within that browser. We want to talk about our global app config service. This is really, really very exciting because it's going to help us to push configuration for that Citrix Enterprise Browser from an admin perspective. It makes an admin's life really, really easy. And then we're going to cover quickly SPA on-prem at the end. And I have questions and answers here at the end, but as soon as I'm finished here, I'll be monitoring the chat and I can help hopefully answer some questions or help Javier as well. Next slide. So when we talk about using IT at home, I suppose we're talking about using a consumer laptop. We're using a laptop that we probably share with other members of the family. We don't maybe know what the AV version is. We don't know when it was last updated. There may be potentially some malware on there, and there might be unknown software that we don't know. These are normal laptops that we use at home and share with the family. We're going to use that consumer browser, whether that be Chrome, Edge, Firefox. It's going to have possibly unknown extensions on there, unknown trackers and cookies and browser history. We'll use the home Wi-Fi, probably doesn't have any inspection, no monitoring, no DLP, etc. And then we'll connect to things like Facebook, Twitter, Amazon. We've got flexible authentication there, long-lived tokens. There was another breach recently about long-lived tokens, trackers, cookies for data mining. But when we then move to a business situation, we want to then have secure access for those business applications. The first thing we do is we probably put in a managed enterprise laptop. That particular managed enterprise laptop is going to have Microsoft Defender on there. It's going to have enforced logon standards. We're going to make sure the AV is up to date, all going to be pushed by a policy, and we'll make sure that we avoid malware. We still have our consumer browser though, with our unknown extensions, trackers, cookies, browsing history, etc., and save passwords. We're going to communicate probably via VPN now, and that VPN is going to have traffic inspection, monitoring, DLP, sandboxes, etc. And we're going to connect to things like Workday, business critical applications with business critical data on there that needs to be secure. So we're going to make sure that we layer on things like Okta for multi-factor authentication or Azure Active Directory. We're going to make sure we enforce that MFA, and we're going to make sure we restrict access to those applications in a contextual way, depending on the scenario. But the one thing that stands out here is that we are continuing to use the consumer browsers that we would use at home on our home devices with those unknown extensions, unknown trackers. If we don't manage this browser then the hackers will. So what we're proposing here is that we change that out and we start to use the enterprise browser instead, where we can centralized management. As I said, we're going to use the global app config service to do that, and we've some great demos of that later. We're going to add additional security controls. We have audit logging, and we have direct access to internal and external web applications. So one of the questions I get asked a lot, well, how do I get access to the enterprise browser? How is it packaged? You know, Citrix packaging, etc. So Citrix Enterprise Browser is part of the secure private access packaging. So if you have secure private access and you're using web and SaaS applications, you want to wrap security around them using the enterprise browser, you're going to want to have Citrix private access, secure private access. So secure private access is made up of a lot of functions and features. You know, it allows for zero trust network access to all your IT applications. We're going to make sure we have adaptive access and security controls that are contextual. You know, when do I see clipboard mapping? When do I not? When do I have a watermark? When do I not? We have adaptive authentication around MFA based on role and geo, as well as device posture check, which will use an EPA scan to check the machine. We have remote browser isolation, where we can actually open a browser in a completely air-gapped isolated environment for sites that you do not want accessed on your corporate environment. And then we're going to wrap that around, wrap analytics around that from visibility and a monitoring perspective. We also then have single sign-on, which I touched on earlier, but we're going to deep dive into that a little bit more later to give a really good user experience. And then, as I said, today we're going to focus on that Citrix Enterprise Browser, which is that local state-of-the-art browser. So what is our enterprise browser? Our enterprise browser is part of Workspace app. It's installed as part of that Workspace app, and it's the first Chromium-based enterprise browser that secures access to SaaS, web, and internal applications, and it gives you that admin control on there as well. We have web security, browser security, a really good user experience, and the ability to invoke remote browser isolation. Fantastic. Right, Javi, I'm going to hand over to you now to start talking about the functionality.
Thank you very much, Wendy. So hope everyone can hear me okay. So we are going to start the presentation, and we are going to have some live demos using a Windows device and Mac OS. Before starting the presentation, we are going to explain a few things that we consider very basic regarding what we can do in terms of functionality, security, and cloud management with the Citrix Enterprise Browser. So in terms of functionality, we are going to demonstrate how this enterprise browser is designed with a Chromium-based underlayer. So that means that the end users that are familiar with any Chromium browser like Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome can start utilizing this Citrix Enterprise Browser without learning a new tool, because it's basically the same interface and the same components like tabs, bookmarks, extensions. In terms of functionality, we are going to talk about how can we provide access to internal web apps and external web apps, and also without a VPN client. And we are going to explain as well how can you provide this single sign-on experience. And that means that the user, when they access into their software as a service apps or their web apps, they don't have to remember the username and password. They just open the app and they have single sign-on experience. In terms of security, we are going to talk about all the contextual client access controls that we have deployed for this Citrix Enterprise Browser. How can we provide an extra layer of security, for example, when accessing to a particular app, and disable copy and paste, disable upload and download, so that will prevent any data infiltration or exfiltration, and it will work really, really well together with Citrix Enterprise Browser. And we're also going to explain how can we control the Chrome extensions that you can add. So that means you have full visibility as an IT admin to prevent any unknown extension to be installed on the enterprise browser. And this is really cool. So we are going to do all of this with some live examples, and hopefully it will be better understand at the end. And the third part of the presentation is the cloud management. So basically, we have a service built on cloud that is a centralized management and control of everything that is happening on the enterprise browser. So that means you can push policies, you can push extensions, you can push bookmarks, and you have remote management of all the enterprise browser. And the best part of this is not only for your managed devices, we can provide secure access from both managed and unmanaged devices. So that means a bring your own device or a personal home device that tries to access with secure with Citrix and Citrix Enterprise Browser, you can manage this without managing the device. So that is a really, really cool feature. And to make it easy, we are going to split the presentation in 3 blocks. And we are going to start with the first one, which is functionality. And for this first block, the first block, the thing that we are going to define is, as we mentioned, this Citrix Enterprise Browser is based on Chromium, and we have a full set of capabilities that we bring into the table. So we can provide single sign-on to all applications, and that means we have 2 ways that we can deliver this. We have SAML capabilities to provide this seamless single sign-on experience when accessing to your apps, so you don't have to type your username and password when you enter on that. And we also have simplified single sign-on. So we can reutilize your user session and apply this when accessing to your software as a service apps. Another good feature that we have is we can provide VPN-less access to internal web apps. So that means that you don't need to deploy anything internally to expose any public IP certificate, any network component to publish an internal web app. Citrix is going to deliver this in a very simple manner, and we are going to explain a little bit how to configure this during this presentation.
Javier, a quick question has come in there, and I think I know you're going to cover it later, but it's quite a good one for now too. From a client perspective, we're talking about Windows and Mac right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no Linux just yet.
Not yet. It's in development.
Yeah.
It's in the roadmap, and hopefully we will have very soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. So we have also the possibility to use the browser as a default browser for all the links in the operating system, or also a new method that what we do is, if we detect that there is an internal link, we use the enterprise browser. If we detect that there is an external link, you can use a different or a native browser that you have in your operating system. And both of them live together. And we are going to have a live demo about this capability. And the fourth option is this enterprise browser, as we mentioned, is based on Chromium. So that means that if you are using any Chromium web conferencing tool, like Teams, Teams Online, or Zoom, or GoToMeeting, you can use your own webcam and your microphone. So we have support for that, and also we have support for progressive web apps. So if you have, for example, any application like Outlook that you want to install the progressive web app version, we are compatible with that as any Chromium browser. So that is really, really cool. I'm going to demo this later on the presentation. So let's define what is this browser architecture, how can I get this browser? So traditionally, all the end users have been using, as we formerly know, the Citrix receiver, or now how it's called, Citrix Workspace app. So Citrix Workspace app traditionally has been used to access to your virtual applications, Linux or Windows, and also your virtual desktop, Windows or Linux. So it used the HDX protocol, and traditionally this is how it works for the last 30 years for on-premise and cloud deployments. So with Citrix Cloud and the new Citrix Enterprise Browser, what we are doing is we are providing this application embedded inside the Workspace app. So you don't need to install any additional agent. As long as you install Workspace app, Citrix Enterprise Browser will be installed at the same time. So you don't need to do any extra steps to configure this. The question that you made before, Wendy, was very appropriate, but at the moment we have general availability for Windows and Mac operating system, and hopefully soon enough there will be another version for Linux and other operating systems. Before I forgot to mention, obviously the Citrix Workspace app is using the current release, and at the moment there is no LTSR, but probably the LTSR next to come will include this possibility. But this is something that is down the line. And as I mentioned before, all this Citrix Enterprise Browser is based on Chromium. So it's the same engine underneath as Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. So everything will be very intuitive for end users. And with Citrix Enterprise Browser, we have the secure private access, and we can provide access to two types of applications. What we call software as a service apps, that are web applications that are available on the internet, like, for example, Gmail, Slack, Office, Salesforce, and this Citrix Enterprise Browser can navigate and access to this website. And we add an extra capability to provide single sign-on, so the user doesn't have to type any username and password. So we have another session that we ran like 2 months ago regarding this, how can you implement single sign-on with Citrix, and we did for the Citrix user group community. I think the video is on the YouTube channel. So if you want to know how to implement this single sign-on, we have another session explaining all these capabilities. And the second part that we can provide access is when you have a web application that is hosted in your on-prem or cloud data center, and we provide access without VPN. So you don't need to have any VPN client or access to all your internal network. So Citrix deploys a Citrix connector appliance, and this connector appliance is the one that is going to communicate with your internal web application. So as I mentioned before, you don't need to deploy any network component, use a public IP, use an external certificate. Everything will work in a very simple manner. So we do usually, as a product specialist, we deal with customer, we implement proof of concepts, and having a very basic deployment for SPA doesn't take more than an hour and a half, and you can have this functionality ready to go. And as an end user, when you access to your workspace, you will have list all your desktop and application, and inside your application, the end user will not distinguish what is a virtual app or what will be a software as a service apps. Only when they open, they will see that if it's a software as a service app, they will open in Citrix Enterprise Browser, and if it's a virtual app, it will use the HDX. So it will be a normal window. So in my case, I can do that. Another advantage that we have with this is before, with Citrix deployments, traditionally, you have to deploy an internet browser in your data center, and you are using your CPU resources, your memory, your hardware resources in your data center to process the access to this application. So with this Citrix Enterprise Browser, this thing is, you don't require to load anything or increase the load in your data center, because it will be loaded locally in the endpoint. As we mentioned before, this is the word browser mode, and if we go to settings inside the enterprise browser, we can see that there is a word browser capability, and obviously in Windows you need to make the Citrix Enterprise Browser as default, and then this Citrix Enterprise Browser, they will evaluate every link that you open, every hyperlink, and if it's a corporate hyperlink, it will be open in the Citrix Enterprise Browser. If it's a normal link, which is outside the corporation, you can choose a different browser to open access to this website. Okay, I think it's going to be very clear when I do the live demo, so hopefully this will be easy. So now we end with functionality, and we are going to start with all the security piece. So we define what applications I can provide access before. And in this part, what we are going to do is what security layer, what can I apply to ensure that there is no data infiltration, exfiltration, and how can we protect the access to this application? So first, we are adopting all the Zero Trust Network Access framework. And with this, we are evaluating the device before accessing to an application. So that means we can check that the device belongs to an Active Directory group or Azure Active Directory group, or if it's a Google group or Okta group. And on top of that, we can check the device posture if it's coming from a desktop or a mobile device, or where are they connecting from? For example, if they are coming from a country, an unknown country, or an unknown IP, and we can determine if we allow access, deny access, or allow access with restrictions. So all these things combined together will apply for the CTNA. So first we evaluate the access, and then we apply what will be the access. So as I mentioned, you have allow with restriction, and deny. So when we allow with restriction, we have hundreds of flexible combinations to protect access to your web and software as a service app. So that means for some applications, you can display a watermark. For some applications, you can disable clipboard access, copy and paste. For some applications, you can restrict downloads and uploads. And you can define your combination per application level. So this is very, very granular and very powerful in terms of configuration. So it's just adapt to your requirements and apply for that. So when we talk about this web app security, we have two kinds of security policies. We have the non-security policies, and these policies are or consist of we can disable clipboard, so disable copy and paste. We can disable uploads and downloads. We can, if the end user tries to print the website, we can disable printing. And we can also show a watermark with the username and the IP where they are connecting from. So for example, if they take a screenshot, we can identify what was the user who took the screenshot or a photo of the screen. And on top of these normal and non-security policies, we have an extra layer of security, which is anti-keylogger, anti-screen capture capabilities. So as I mentioned before, it's very easy in the interface to activate, and you can apply per application level. And it consists of anti-keylogger and anti-screen capture. And what are those applications? So basically, is the anti-keylogging is providing, is scrambling all the keystroke within the Citrix Workspace browser. So that means, and I'm going to show later, if you have any malware that is running underneath in your operating system and is capturing, for example, when you try to access to a website and you have to type your username and password, this simple logger will be able to capture that. So anti-keylogger will be the best protection that you can have in a software level to avoid a malware to be able to capture that. And the second part is anti-screen capture. And anti-screen capture have two capabilities. One of those is protect against any screenshot or malware that is taking a screenshot of your applications. So what we will do is black the screen. And also, if you have any confidential information, app protection is detecting if you are using any video conferencing tool. For example, Teams, for example, Zoom, GoToMeeting, Slack. So whenever app protection or anti-screen capture is activated, if we detect that you are sharing your screen with Teams or Zoom, we are going to block the screen. And I'm going to demo this on the presentation, so hopefully you will have better idea about this.
Javier, there's a nice question just come in there that might be, I think, other people will benefit from answering as well, around if I have Workspace app and I have, I'm trying to use the HTML browser as well. What requirements are there to use full fat Workspace, or what can I use with Workspace using the HTML client? What's the requirements?
Yeah, so the HTML client I think is now GA, is going to always open an isolated browser mode. So basically, in order to protect and have these app protection capabilities, you need to run the Windows or Mac OS FAT client in order to use the Citrix Enterprise Browser. And the reason
It needs
being
to be installed. Is it? So if you were to use the HTML client and open a link, then it will just use the Workspace app underneath.
that's correct.
Yeah.
No, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Just I suppose the question was, do I need to have the Workspace app installed? Which I think you'd answered to say yes, because you got the enterprise browser built into that. And if I was to use my HTML client and click on an application that was secured, for example, by anti-key logging and app protection, then it's going to utilize the Workspace app that's installed on the OS.
That's correct. For that, you need to have an extension. So when you open, give me a moment, bring in my browser. You need to have to open protected apps. You need to have the Workspace app extension. If you don't use the FAT client to access to your apps, and this application will communicate with your Workspace app in your operating system, and then open the application with Citrix Enterprise Browser. Obviously, when you are using the HTML client, and for example, you are using Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, we don't own control of a different browser. So we cannot apply these protection policies to an external app. So the only way that we can apply these app protection policies is when we use Citrix Workspace app and Citrix Enterprise Browser. And in this way, we can manage the access only by this. And another thing that we are doing is, if you try to access to an app protected, it will be disabled whenever you are not using your enterprise browser. So if I try to access to a normal application that is protected from Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome, I will get a pop-up denying me the access because I need to use the FAT client in order to access.
That's perfect. So yeah, so you don't have the capabilities to actually have the app protection kick in. So it's just not going to do it at all. That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last but not the least, remote browser isolation. And this is really, really cool because what we are doing is every time that you are launching an application, instead to launch locally, what we are doing in Citrix Cloud is we are creating a new Linux instance, and it's based on Linux. So we are running a isolated Linux environment, creating an enterprise browser just for access to the application that you would like to access, and they will be isolated in this console. So there is no, these applications just using secure browser service underneath, and creates an air gap between the web and software as a service app and the endpoint. And that prevents the movement from both sensitive and malicious content, because everything is in a sandbox and is isolated in Citrix Cloud. Whenever you close the app is destroyed, and there is no password, there is no anything cached, any certificate. Everything is gone as soon as you close the app. In order to activate this remote browser in the same application, you need to click Open in Remote Browser option, and what it will do is you have all the capabilities that we have mentioned before, plus the remote browser, and the remote browser will have outside your network in Citrix Cloud to open access to this website. When we see that this application makes sense to deploy remote browser, so for example, let's say in your internal organization, you don't have, you have a firewall to disable, I don't know, disable your employees to access to Facebook, but you have the social media people that needs to access to Facebook. So you can use this isolated browser in order to allow access externally in an isolated mode to Facebook or to other websites. It's an example. Another way to that the secure browser is very useful is protecting for risky websites. So you have any kind of website that you don't have any visibility or what they are doing, or if it's potentially can install something or can have something malicious, you can open in the isolated browser, and that will not impact your network or anything. As soon as you destroy the website, the browser and the session will be destroyed as well. We can also provide protection from compromised websites, and there is another use case for internal security team testing. So you can isolate the traffic inside the isolated browser. And now, after 30 minutes, we are going to start with the demo time. And for the demo time, I'm going to use the same web application, and I'm going to simulate what we have, we call an intranet. And this intranet is deployed in my internal network. So I don't have, the only way to access to this internet is if I'm in the office or using a VPN. Or traditionally, that will be the only way to do that. With Citrix, we can provide access to this intranet with Citrix Enterprise Browser. And for the first part of the demo, I'm going to provide access and see that the functionality of the website is going to work in the same way as when we are in the office, and there will be no restriction at all. Then we will start with the intranet secure, and I'm going to add an extra layer of security. Here, when I open this application will be open with a watermark showing my username and my IP. I'm going to disable copy and paste, upload and download, and printing. So everything will be secure. The next application will be protected. So I'm going to apply the anti-screen capture and anti-key logging capabilities. And the last one is going to be the isolated. So I'm going to open exactly the same application in an isolated mode. So this is going to be an incremental use of this website. Can you see my Windows device working on the screen? Let me see.
Yep, I can see your workspace app is opening now.
Perfect. So as we mentioned, the enterprise browser is working on, is embedded on the workspace app. So you have two options. So you can open the Citrix Enterprise Browser. You can open the Citrix Enterprise Browser. Oh, sorry. Now, if you check in your apps, as you can see here, so it's installed in your menu, you can access this, or you can access by opening the icon that is embedded in the workspace app, or opening one of your internal web apps. So if you can see here, if I open my intranet, my internet browser, my Citrix Enterprise Browser is opening, and I have access to my intranet. What you can see here is I automatically single sign on to this application, and we are providing this VPN-less access. This Citrix Enterprise Browser is based on Chromium, so that means you have the same tabs, the same groups for tabs. For example, you can have group for tabs available here. You have your extensions as well, and I'm going to talk about this later on the presentation. You also have your bookmarks. Okay, and it will be the same interface as Edge or Chrome. So it will be very familiar for all your users. And if you can see, I have full control of the website. So if I want to download a link, I can download a file without no issue. If I try to copy and paste, you can see that the copy is allowed, so I can copy. If I try to print, I can print without no issue. It will generate a copy of the website and send to the printer. And as I mentioned, download, upload will work again. So for this first use case, what we are doing is opening my intranet, have single sign-on, and have full access with no restrictions to this application. The second part, I'm going to move to favorites here. I'm going to open the secure version of this application. So in this case, I'm opening exactly the same app, I have exactly the, as I mentioned before, the single sign-on capabilities. I don't have to type any username and password. And I'm using this VPN-less connection. But you can see straight away that I have my username and the IP where I'm connecting from as a watermark. So if somebody take a screenshot, you will see and you can identify the end user that is accessing to this website. In terms of the controls, if I try to copy something from the website to my internal device, copy is gray out. So I cannot copy. If I use the command Control-C, you will see that a pop-up is telling me that the clipboard access has been restricted by your administrator. So that means that I cannot copy anything from the website to the local PC and vice versa. If I try to download or upload, it will be restricted again. So if I try to download a file, the file will be blocked and you will see the pop-up telling that download is restricted by the administrator. If I try to print, we will have exactly the same experience. Printing has been restricted to your administrator. So for the next use case, we are going to access exactly to the same website, and we are going to add the app protection capabilities. So in this case, I'm accessing to the same website. Everything that I was explaining before is still the same. All the security features are still the same. But on top of that, we are applying the anti-screenshot capabilities. So if there is any program that tries to get a screenshot, you will see that we are blocking what is the corporate content to be taken from any snipping tool. So that, that can be done in application and tab access. So for example, if I have another tab that the application is not protected, I can take a screenshot. But if I have a tab that is protected, I will see a black screen as I did right now. And another cool feature that we have on this case is I'm going to use a simulation of a keylogger. So basically, just give me a moment, preparing this. So what this keylogger is doing at the moment is capturing every keystroke that I type. So for example, I'm going to open an incognito window of Chrome, and I'm going to log into Gmail. And I'm going to type, so you can see this this keylogger is capturing all the keystrokes. A moment, I'm going to panel it. So you can see this keylogger is capturing my email address and also my password. Obviously, I type in a fake password. And this fake password is this keylogger is able to capture this screen, these keystrokes. So most of malware or some of the malware is based on the same capabilities of this keylogger. So it's some malware that you install with an application that is running in the background in your operating system and able to capture these keystrokes. So let's see if we open an application that is protected by the enterprise browser, like for example, this one. If I try to type something here, this text is protected, you can see that this application give me a moment, and this application here, so the text that we have here, we are scrambled on this text. So this is a live demo, by the way. I don't know if I can take date and time. And you can see that at the moment, it's 13th of April. I'm in Europe, so for me, is the time.
Yeah, that's correct for where you're running that browser.
So that's it. And on top of that, we have also, just give me a moment, they kick me out from here. Login again. On top of this internal application, I'm going to make an example with software as a service apps. So in my case, I'm going to open Salesforce. and I'm going to show this application can be accessed from any web browser because it's an application that is publicly available. But the thing that we can integrate with the enterprise browser, we have SAML capabilities to provide single sign-on. So you can see I access to Salesforce and I have my session open in Salesforce and I didn't have to type any username and password. So you can see here, without typing any username and password, I just access to my websites. And another cool thing that we have is, okay, do I need to open every website from the Workspace app? And the answer for that is no. You can have also push bookmarks from Citrix Cloud. So that means that you can open different websites. For example, all these internal websites that I'm accessing now. And all of this will be open in a very fast way with the Citrix Enterprise Browser. So you can see I have the same single sign-on capabilities to access to my Workday, to access to my Concur. I will have single sign-on and I could access to my apps directly from the same browser. Okay, and on top of that, I'm just going to change this a moment. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open a Mac OS just to show what will be the end user experience. Here it is. Sorry for the disruption. So when I open a Mac OS, it will be exactly the same experience. So if I open my Internet Secure, Citrix Enterprise Browser will be the default browser to access to this application. And as you can see, I can access to the same app. If I try to download a file, it will be blocked in the same way as Windows. If I try to copy and paste, it will be disabled as well. If I try to print, it will be disabled. So it will work exactly in the same way. And also for the protected app will be exactly the same. If I try to take a screenshot, you can see that the screenshot that I took, we are getting gray out the protected application. So it will work exactly in the same way the Windows version and the Linux version. Okay. So very good. And now we are going to start with the third part of the presentation, which is how can we deploy this centralized from a cloud management? And how can I apply all these policies, push these bookmarks? I'm going to talk about the extension in a minute. So this cloud management can be easily administrated from Citrix Cloud. And what we are using underneath is the global app config service. So this is a very simple tool that is going to do two easy things for you. One, with auto discovery, we only need for our end users to remember their email address. And if they type their email address, they can access to their store URL. So we can translate the email address to the store URL. So they don't have to type my store.citrix.com or cloud.com. And the second part is the configuration service is going to be able to push a lot of granular configuration to a lot of components for the endpoints. And this configuration service is going to work for both managed and unmanaged devices. So you don't need any GPOs. And also the good thing, if you have any bring your own device, you can apply these policies to bring your own device. This service has a lot of components, but for the presentation today, we are going to be focused on the possibilities that we have for Enterprise Browser. And for Enterprise Browser, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I have my login here. So I'm bringing my Citrix Cloud tenant, and in my Citrix Cloud tenant, if I go to Workspace configuration, and I go to app configuration, I have all the global app config ready to configure for our users. So if I go to Citrix Enterprise Browser, I can, for example, set the mandatory extensions. I can allow or disable end users to save password or don't save password, or I can disable or allow the incognito mode. I can disable the developer tools. For example, in terms of security, things that we are going to do is disable developer tools to make sure that the end user doesn't have access to the network, HTML, components. So everything will be done from this enterprise browser. And also, as we mentioned, you have your bookmarks. So when I open the bookmarks in my previous screen, these bookmarks were one moment. These bookmarks are defined in a file here, and here I'm pushing these bookmarks remotely to any browser, corporate or managed or unmanaged device. So basically, this is the console, and we have a lot of possibilities with this global app config service, and I'm talking about this for enterprise browser only. As I mentioned, global app config service can be very granular and very powerful for other services, but for today we are focusing only for the Citrix Enterprise Browser capabilities. So we can manage extensions remotely. So that means that all the extensions that we are trying to deploy for our Citrix Enterprise Browser by default will be blocked, and we have a list of force extension or managed extension, and this will be auto-installed in the enterprise browser remotely. And also we have an allow list that they will be a kind of a store of extensions of allowed apps that the end user can install on demand. And I'm going to demo this in a few minutes. The next part is we can do a web filtering. So we can make sure that we can deny or allow access or check what website the Citrix Enterprise Browser is accessing. We can push bookmarks, as I mentioned before. So all the bookmarks that I was pushing, or I was bookmarks in the bookmarks folder in my enterprise browser, were pushed automatically from the cloud to the user. So the user doesn't have to record all the bookmarks. So everything is cloud-based. And also we can disable to save password. We can clear data on exit. If we can force this capability, we can disable incognito mode, and also we can disable developer tools. And let me see, I'm going to show this in a few minutes. So now this is my enterprise browser. As I mentioned, you have your bookmarks, and in your bookmarks, all the bookmarks that you can see here, the end user doesn't have to record. All these bookmarks are remotely pushed from the global app config service. So very easy for your end users. Another good thing is the extensions. And in the extensions, we have a mandatory extensions and also a allow extension. So when an extension is mandatory, this extension is going to auto-install in your enterprise browser, and you cannot disable or remove. So the end user doesn't have any capacity or any management over this application. And in additional to this, you have different applications that are only allowed by the end users. So for example, if I try to install a Google Translator, as an example, I can go to the Chrome store and I can add this extension to my repository inside the enterprise browser. So you can see that the extension Google Translate is already available in my list of extensions. So another possibility is if you want to delete an extension that you don't need anymore, the end user can remove an optional extension, not a mandatory. So if we remove the extension will be gone. And another cool thing about this, and coming back to when Wendy was explaining about the ChatGPT extension that had the malware, for example, I think it's still available on the store. So you can see, oh, sorry. the ChatGPT extension that runs on malware, if an end user tries to install this application, we can see that it's blocked by admin. So there is no way that the end user can bypass the protection for global app service and then install their own set of applications. Another example here, if I look for a VPN client to bypass the network, for example, the VPN client cannot be installed on this service. Another cool thing about security here is incognito window for this version is gray out, so I cannot run any incognito window, as well as the developer tools. So if I try to inspect an element or use F12 to launch the Chromium developer tools that give me access to the network, modify the website, and all these things, is automatically disabled. And as I mentioned before, this is working for both managed or corporate devices and unmanaged devices or personal devices, so we can block this remotely from the cloud.
There's a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Actually, we've got a few questions that have come in, and I was just kind of waiting for a gap to ask you. What about session cookies? They're not held between sessions or extension personas when inside extensions. Do they are they persistent?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the question is, how does the enterprise browser handle personal settings such as session? So from session to session, sites to sites, or cookies, etc. So I think you've answered some of those in what you've covered, but possibly not the cookies question.
Yeah, so the cookies and extensions, we have an option that can be done remotely management. And what we do is you have delete browsing data and exit. So that will close and delete all the sessions like autofill, browsing history, cache, cookies, download history, data, password, site settings. So every time we can have a global app configuration setting that will apply to any corporate user. And as soon as they close the session, everything will be deleted and destroyed. So in this way, there is no tracker, there is nothing that keeps alive on the browser. Okay. And sorry, I want to finish this only 2 minutes more. I just want to mention this, and we can have an extra time for the Q&A, okay?
Yep, absolutely.
So we have a very big announcement, and secure private access on-prem, or as they call SPA on-prem, is now general availability last week, and this is a very good news. So everything that I have been showing so far, it belongs to Citrix Cloud and only for Citrix Cloud customers. But now we have the same capabilities from on-prem customers. So the announcement came last week, and we have publicly available guides in how to deploy the same Citrix Enterprise Browser user experience for on-prem customers. And the good thing is you don't need to implement anything, any extra component. This works with your current storefront, with your current NetScaler gateway, and you can apply the same enterprise browser capabilities as we saw on the cloud demo for your on-premise deployments. So Citrix Enterprise Browser will communicate with your NetScaler gateway, and you can have all these protection capabilities or security capabilities added for your on-prem deployment. And in my case, and I'm going to do a quick demo, this I'm going to run from my local PC. So I cannot, in my local PC here, I cannot bypass the app protection. So this is going to be interesting to see. So I'm just logging to my storefront. So this is a current on-prem deployment. So I have all my virtual applications alongside my new software as a service apps. This is completely new. And in my case, I have the same intranet as I was showing in the cloud deployment. So if I open the intranet, it's going to open my enterprise browser. And if you can see in my enterprise browser, I have exactly the same capabilities as before. And this is for my on-prem deployment. So I can have the same disable download, disable copy and paste, disable printing, and the watermark. And on top of that, I can use the app protection. And I think you will see here that the app protection capability is blocking out. I'm using Zoom and I'm using the screen sharing. So whenever I move to the tab that is protected, you will see a black screen. I think you can see the black screen, no?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, perfect. So you can see how this app protection is working in real life and also for an SPA on-prem deployment. So this is completely new. It just came back last week or was announced general availability last week. And we have a lot of interest from customers on deploying these capabilities from on-prem deployments. Just to summarize very quickly, when we define this enterprise browser, we are trying to solve a problem and we are going to get this extra layer of security to allow you to increase your protection for your end users and your corporation. So we can integrate this enterprise browser with enterprise laptop and also bring your own device. We can also have this managed extension, simplified single sign-on, and we can integrate with analytics as well, and also with any identity provider of the choice. So if you are using Okta, Azure Active Directory, it will integrate to provide this seamless single sign-on experience for your end users. And also with secure private access, we can provide access to any enterprise software as a service apps or internal web app. So when we started the presentation, we talked about all the problems that we find with all this extra layer of security, or the problem that we have with a consumer web browser, and how this Citrix Enterprise Browser will be the solution that Citrix is provided to add this extra layer of security for your deployments.
Brilliant demos, Javier. Have to say, well done.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. I
So
know
with
we're
this,
a little bit over, aren't we?
Yeah. So we are a little bit over, and just a quick mention. We can do Q&A now if there is any people who wants to stay a little bit longer. And I think we are going to prepare a new SPA on-prem deep dive for the Citrix user group. So hopefully for the next quarter, we are going to do an extra session and we are going to explain how can you implement the latest demo I did and how can you reutilize your current on-premise infrastructure to deploy the same end user experience with Citrix Enterprise Browser.
Looking forward to it.
Very good.
Thank you so much. There's only two open questions left, but I think if we take this one last one, Javier, if I wrap security, if I open an application and I don't wrap any security around it, what way will it open? As in, will it use Citrix Enterprise Browser? Will it open in the local browser?
If you open any application without any security, it will be open on the enterprise browser. And now that you mentioned that, and apologies, I forgot to explain how the enterprise browser works when we are using the work mode. And there was a very good demo, and apologies for this. So whenever we are trying to open, for example, I receive an email and I have two links. For example, if there is an external link, this external link will be open in the default browser. So in this case, if you can see here, I'm using Microsoft Edge to open a normal link, okay? However, if I open, for example, in my mail, an internal link, we are going to detect that, and we are open the internal link with the Citrix Enterprise Browser. So this mode can be configured in settings and is called Work Browser. So what we are doing is the default browser in the operating system will be Citrix Enterprise Browser, and when you open a link, if we detect that the link is internal, we will use Citrix Enterprise Browser. If we detect that the link is external, you need to select what will be your browser to open your non-work links.
Perfect. That answers that question really well. And I think from everybody who works in our teams, that is one of our favorite features because it's just completely seamless and it just works so well. So thanks for answering that one. And yeah, I think that's it, Javier. I think
Okay.
we're good. Thanks everybody for joining. I've also put in all of the links, Javier, that you talked about with the SAML, Salesforce, single sign-on, and please feel free, anyone, to visit our citrixie.com site for any of the other blogs that are there.
Yep, and I will share those links that you shared in the email that goes out tomorrow with the recording as well. So we'll have that all in one place. And I think we're ready to wrap up, right? Everybody disappeared but me. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate having you guys back here. And
Thanks,
excited
Stephanie.
for the next one.
Yeah,
Thank you
looking
very
forward
much.
to coming back.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye,
day.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right, have a great day. Bye.